Okay, so we're here with Heath Beaudry, who's a Republican running for U.S. House of Representatives. Heath, glad to have you here with us.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
You bet. And even though you couldn't be here in person, we have the audio interview, and I appreciate you taking the time. Heath, I'm Brian Martin, managing editor of the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, for those listening to this online later. Our two community reps, Bob Fecht and Sharon Fain, will be listening to this later as part of our editorial recommendation process, but not here with me at the moment. So, Heath, I wanted to start with what specific issues or concerns caused you to run for Congress?
Well, I really felt strongly that we needed a representative that was going to make Wyoming first on for their focus for what they go to work for and show up for every day. And specifically our continuing need for energy development within the state, but for us to be successful as a state and for our citizens to be prosperous, we need more than just continuing to develop those natural energy resources that we have. So we need to look at other forms of generating income for the state. So that includes tourism, that includes alternative energy production like wind, and additional, more advanced production like fusion and other types that are out there right now.
Okay, very good. Heath, what qualifications do you bring to the table that will help you to serve as a congressperson?
Well, I've lived in Wyoming for almost 20 years, so I have a real strong sense of the community and the state and its issues. And if you look at my career, I've worked in the energy sector, I've worked in the mental health sector, I've worked in finance, I've also worked in technology. That's where my primary focus and kind of my passion in my working career is in technology. So I feel like I can leverage all of those experiences as a positive asset and a force for change if the citizens decide to elect me as their representative.
Can you be more specific about what you did in the minerals industry and what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I'm currently in the finance industry, so I work for a regional bank, and I'm what's classified as a community banker. And what that is essentially is that I work with the public on a daily basis. It is what banking was in its original kind of form. A banker worked within their community. They volunteered, lived within their community, and they work with the public on a daily basis. And then as far as my other qualifications, I worked for Neighbors Drilling, and I worked for a technology outfit, basically a division within Neighbors. And so I have some experience in that field. And then as well as I work for some very large technology companies, so like Hewlett-Packard and Dell Computers.
Heath, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing the nation? And once you identify that largest challenge, what's one or two others?
The biggest challenge I think we're facing right now is our continuing battle with the budget and the national debt. By and large, that's the biggest issue I think that we're facing because that affects everyone. And secondly, I would say the spread of terrorism that we're starting to see in other countries that we don't necessarily in the past always saw, whether it was attacks in London, Paris, and then some recent very disturbing incidents in the States in the last 6 or 7 months.
Heath, one of the public's biggest complaints about our national political process is that everything is partisan, which they say has led to nothing substantial getting done in Washington. If you're elected, how would you work across party lines to get bills passed that benefit your constituents back here in Wyoming?
Well, first off, I would approach it from a relationship building standpoint. Too often times, especially as we've seen in the last 6 or 7 years with this current administration going on 8 years now, we talk at one another instead of to each other. And we see more of this hashtag advocacy, is what I like to call it. And it's easy to silence someone on a debate. It's easy to be able to kind of turn the dial up and generate lots of noise if you just call someone something inflammatory and whatever that may be. And then you can kind of, wipe your hands and walk away and not have to really face the issue. If you look at what's just recently happened on the floor of the House with the Democrats holding a sit-in just a few days ago, it really was astonishing to me that we have elected representatives that are paid and have been appointed by all of us, and you have some that have decided that they want to hold a sit-in, and this is an example of this partisanship that I'm talking about. Now, having a sit-in to take away your rights. And to me, I just find that quite astonishing. 4 years ago, we had sit-ins to restore rights, to give rights. And so when I take a look back and look at the larger issue now that we're facing, I kind of scratch my head sometimes and wonder how did we get this far, And, what happened that kind of turned things in this direction. And just real quickly, if I can, address a couple of those points. What I think is that you've seen this further consolidation of power with fundraising, the rise of the super PACs, the rise of mega corporations is what I like to call them. And you have these certain very wealthy people that have an extremely high net worth in the billions, and they can contribute whatever they want, whatever they see fit to a candidate that they choose or a candidate that they oppose. And so it's caused a distortion in our political process, and that's one aspect. And there's additional things like lobbying in Washington and contributions, and anyways, it goes on and on. So all of these things have been slowly building in over the last 20 years or so. I think that has contributed a lot to to what we're seeing right now. And so that is another reason why I wanted to run, because I kind of felt like that we didn't really have anyone that was really representative of the people that elect them. A lot of them are very wealthy to begin with, and many of them are even wealthier when they come out of office. And many of them spend 2, 3, 4 days a week on the phone talking to people that they don't even know, asking them for money. And so I asked myself, what kind of bubble, what kind of distortion does that cause for someone to be in that? And so we have to do something else. We have to make a change and have a debate, not appeasement, not agreeing on everything. And it's going to take time to change things.
Heath, as a follow-up to that, if you're elected, how do you keep from being pulled into that DC system and changed by that system? How would you try to stay outside of that and continue to represent your constituents and not get caught up in that process?
Right. Well, that is a good question. A number of Tea Party candidates that got swept in a couple of years ago when the Tea Party thing kind of kicked off. I think some of them really struggle with that. For me personally, I kind of go back to my roots. My family, my friends, the ones that support me. And I think that the biggest thing is that that I stay engaged and connected to Wyoming when we're not in session. So that means back here in Evanston in Uintah County, that means traveling to see constituents in other counties within Wyoming, engaging with the state legislature, the governor, really just trying to stay as connected as much as possible and continuing to have those ongoing discussions and debates and encouraging people that, hey, look, if there's something that you're having an issue with, call. You need to reach out and make your thoughts known and be willing to have that dialogue and, again, to have that discussion over those tough decisions that we have to make.
Sounds good. Heath, how important is it for you to maintain your own voice and your own priorities if you're elected rather than just voting the way party leaders want you to vote?
Right. Well, I certainly understand that there will be times pressure put on me to vote a certain way that maybe I don't feel is what I personally believe in. And it's kind of hard to say what the situations might be. But again, I think if people look at it this way, that I consider myself to have strong principles on a lot of core issues, including the Second Amendment. And there are certain things that I'm not willing to compromise on. There are certain things that, as a candidate, you should expect. The voters should expect that a candidate would not compromise on certain core issues. And if the voters elect a candidate or have elected a candidate in the past, they need to look at their voting record. Because if their voting record says one thing and they say something else, well, it's pretty apparent that there's some kind of an issue, something going on. So that's the only thing I can tell people, because I've never served before in this type of position. So they need to look at my core principles, what I've talked about, and ask me, look, put it another way. Okay, it's easy for someone to stand up and tell you what they oppose. It's easy for someone to tell you what they're against. And that's easy. Anyone can do that, okay? But tell me what you're for. Tell me what you believe in. Tell me what you're willing to fight for, to stand for. That's what I would tell the voters if they have a chance to talk with me or email me. Ask me that question. And ask that question of themselves.
Okay. We're going to go through a series of issues that I want you to just touch on, each one of them. And the first one is military spending and obviously locally protecting F.E. Warren Air Force Base that's based here in Cheyenne. What are your feelings about the current level of military spending, and what would you do once you got to D.C.?
Well, I certainly, again, I could consider myself a bit of a technology geek, I guess is one way to put it. So I have read about certain programs that have had some issues and that have had serious cost overruns, like I think it's the J-35, the Joint Strike Fighter. I don't know how much more we should pour into that project, considering the exorbitant cost. That's just one issue. Specifically to Wyoming, I read an article that there were, and I'm not sure if it's correct or not, that there were like 150 missiles or something at that facility, and so that would be something I would have to do further research on and consult with the experts, because again, I'll be honest on that particular issue. I'm not as aware of whether it's a funding, continuing funding, or if there's any kind of funding that they need to do for renovation or updates to their facility.
Okay. The next issue is climate change and environmental threats. What are your positions on those? And then if you want to speak to Environmental Protection Agency overreach as well, if you think that's
Right, right. Well, right off the bat, absolutely. They've had some real boondoggles, to put it mildly, especially that one in Colorado. As far as climate change, well, it's just silly to say that there's not any climate change. The climate's changed on this planet for millions and millions and millions of years. I think what's at the core of the debate is how much human impact is having on it. And again, you can find 10 scientists that'll tell you one thing and 10 that will tell you another, kind of like economic policy. But me personally, I feel like, just as a general rule of thumb, that we should be good stewards of this planet, because we don't really have anywhere else to go right now. So we need to be good stewards of the planet. But I feel like that it's always a balance of making sure that you're not too oppressive to new industry and creating jobs. So that's always going to be a balance and a challenge going forward. But I'm certainly not anti-coal or would go out on the media or the news and tell people, at large, I'm going to put you out of business. I think that's just ridiculous.
Okay. And Heath, the next issue is Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, and what are your feelings about what should be done with that, whether it should be abolished or reformed, and then how would you provide health care coverage to everyone in the country?
Okay. Well, I don't agree with the Medicare expansion. I would, within Wyoming, I've just read and studied too much of other states that have, again, seen it expand beyond what their initial projections are. So if it hasn't worked yet, really, up to this point, I don't think we should, cross our fingers and hope that it's going to work for Wyoming. Because personally, I don't think it will. As far as Obamacare, healthcare, that's really a multiple level issue. There's so many things with healthcare that need to be done. Sure, starting with the ACA is a good first step, but you really need to go back to, and this is where the voters need to understand, that these problems were not started, as much as people disagree with the ACA. These problems did not start with ACA, and they will not be solved by repealing the ACA. Okay, so let me expand on that a little bit further. So yeah, you need to start with the ACA. You need to repeal that, but you need to go all the way back to like 1945 with McCarran-Ferguson, I think is the name of it, and it's how they originally set up the insurance agencies and how they could run within the United States. So you need to go way back and look at all this legislation that's accumulated over the years that's allowed these insurance companies to form these monopolies. Okay, so once you start breaking through that, cracking through that, then at that point, you can, and I kind of like the idea of the exchanges, but I think once you start breaking this up so that people can take their health care with them, so that it's transportable, so that if I were to leave my company that I'm with, as it is now, I lose my insurance. Now, I can go on Cobra, sure, and pay a huge outlay of money, but I can't take my insurance with my deductibles and my co-pays and everything with me. I have to find another employer and then go on their insurance. Okay? And that hurts people. That has been hurting people for decades. And we have to put a stop to it. But the insurance companies, they're not just going to go silently into that good night. They're going to fight tooth and nail with their lobbyists and with their special interest money to make sure that that doesn't happen, to keep things going as they are, the status quo. Okay? So, again, it's not going to be fixed with ACA and repealing it. You've got to go way back and look at this stuff. You've got to look at, and just also to look at how medicine is delivered, how healthcare is delivered. So what innovations can the healthcare industry, and you're seeing some areas, some hospitals that are starting to do that, but what in Wyoming, what can the healthcare industries and the hospitals in Wyoming do to innovate, to streamline care, to make it more efficient, and not only that, but improve the results?
The next issue, Heath, is reducing the federal deficit and the federal debt. How big of a priority do you think that is, and what ideas do you have to make that happen?
Well, it's definitely a priority, but then it's always a priority in every election cycle. It's sort of kind of become a parody, I think, at some point, because we hear a lot of these same issues over and over again every election cycle. So, but ultimately, it's about being fiscally conservative, staying out of needless foreign entanglements, making sure that we're investing properly within our own state, lowering the barrier to entry so that companies want to come work for Wyoming, having a representative that is a strong advocate for the state, and is always out there talking about how great Wyoming is. And at the end of the day, it really, like I said, it just comes down to kind of those core issues, what we can do to get some of the spending under control, and what can we do within the state to increase business activity and so that companies want to come here and do business.
Okay. Heath, how do you feel about the education reforms that have taken place at the federal level? The federal government moved away from the No Child Left Behind Act and is now with the ESSA, and just wondered what your thoughts were about that and the federal involvement in education.
Well, again, it's another one-size-fits-all mandate approach, and what works here in Wyoming doesn't necessarily translate to what works in Maine or Mississippi or Ohio. So they need to leave it up to the states to develop their curriculum that fits within the culture of their state and with what their education goals are. It needs to be challenging curriculum. Personally, I would want to see, and I would be an advocate and really work toward making sure that the schools incorporated more computer science, specifically programming, like Ruby and Python, in like maybe middle school or high school. Again, if you look at these high-paying jobs, these programming-type jobs, they're getting a lot of this from foreign from foreign students, people that come in on these foreign visas, and they get these jobs because we don't have the work population or the workforce that's trained. So, but that takes time to do that. So you have to start when these kids are in, these grade school, middle school, high school. And not every kid that takes a computer class is going to be a programmer and want to do that. I totally get that. But I think you really need to put more of an emphasis within the school and, on top of the schools, engage with them, with the teachers and the administrators and the parents and the students, and really start to develop curriculum that is more focused on the global world that we live in now. These kids that are graduating, that just graduated, they're in a global workforce now. When I graduated from high school 20-plus years ago, it was completely different. We were not as connected as we are, weren't as connected back then as we are now. So they're in a totally different environment now. And you need to give them the tools and the skill sets to be prepared for that. And I think we can do a better job.
Okay, the next issue, Heath, is endangered species and the Endangered Species Act. What are your thoughts about the way the federal government's been handling that, and what would you change?
Well, I mean, if a rancher has land and there are wolves on his land, and the wolves have been taken off the endangered species list, if they're becoming a nuisance, he should have the ability to manage his own land. If that means, killing several of those animals or whatever he feels like or she feels like that's necessary to manage their land and keep control and protect their livestock or sheep or whatever the case may be, then they need to do that. And I don't think you need to come in with excessive regulation and have them do, paperwork and make things difficult for them if they want to do that.
Heath, you live in Evanston, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're in one corner of the state,
Mhm.
southwest. I'm in the southeast in Cheyenne, and
Mhm.
we probably have some similar issues when it comes to our airport service. Um, of course, we're closer to Denver. You're closer to Salt Lake in terms of where people fly. But I'm wondering
Mhm.
how you see the funding for small airports in terms of priorities, and how much you think the federal government should provide to ensure air service in Wyoming.
Well, on that one, I would say that that the state should take more of a role in that. I think we have enough centralized government that the states need to step up more, and if that means getting more funding or more grants or whatever the case may be, that needs to be done to bring in those dollars so that they can make those upgrades or renovations or whatever the case that they feel is necessary, then that's what they should do. But again, we have enough federal intervention as it is. So where do we draw the line? Where do we say, well, yeah, we need your help for this, or well, you need to stab this? So that's kind of where I would generally make a decision on is that the states need to figure out this stuff as much as they can.
So if it comes down to funding for the Essential Air Service program to keep an airline afloat or to keep air service in a particular community, do you think that money then should come from the state level, or would you support it at the federal level coming to Wyoming?
Did you say to keep an airline afloat? Is that what you said?
Or to keep an airline serving a particular community. So if the emplanements, the number of people boarding an aircraft in Cheyenne are on a decline, but if the air carrier is going to pull out of the community because there aren't enough customers, do you support the federal government keeping that airline there or keeping that service?
No, because again, you're asking the federal government to come and intervene on behalf of a company that it doesn't have the business to support it. So you're just giving that money to that company. So no, I would not support that. Because again, where do you? I mean, this is kind of where I view things. Where do you draw the line? Are you going to give huge amounts of money for companies to come into Wyoming to do business? Are you just going to give them payouts, incentives to come in? Or are you going to really do the correct thing, which is lower the barrier to entry, invest in your people so that you have a strong workforce, so when they look at Wyoming as a potential candidate, they go, oh, wow, Wyoming's a great business to do, it's a great state to do business in, and look at their workforce. They've got a really highly trained, educated workforce. We should go to Wyoming. Not, well, they're giving us a bunch of money. Heck, we should go to Wyoming. It just makes sense. Again, where do we draw the line is what I ask people. Where do we draw the line?
Heath, the last issue, we're asking all the candidates for their feelings about the presidential presumptive nominees, and specifically your party's nominee. What are your feelings?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Yeah. What are your feelings? Do you support your party's nominee for president? And
do I? Oh, okay. For president, okay. I thought you were talking about. So I have not made a decision yet. I like some of the things that Trump has done. I like how he's kind of shaken up the political process. I like how he has stuck his thumb in the mainstream media's eye. But there are a few things that do concern me about him. So I have not completely made a decision yet, but I think we need to, for me personally, I need to wait until I see a few more things. I think I'll have a better idea after the convention is finished.
And we should note, since we're not video recording this and it won't be on YouTube, that we're visiting on June 27th. What are the things that you like and what are the things that concern you at this point?
As far as the presidential candidate or just the race in general?
No, about the candidate specifically.
Back to candidates. As far as Trump goes, and Hillary, or just Trump?
Either one or both is fine.
Okay, all right. Well, Hillary is basically going to continue Obama's policies, I think, by and large, for the most. Though she is more, I think she's more of a war hawk, so certain Republicans might like that and might find her appealing as a presidential candidate, unfortunately. As far as the Trump goes as a possible presidential candidate and president, I think the biggest thing that concerns me is that he feels like that the reason why government doesn't work is because the wrong people are in government. And if you just had the right people, in his administration, then everything would be, fine. Everything would be just fine, and everything would operate smoothly. So that bothers me a little bit. And the other thing, probably the most concerning, is that I'm worried that he would run as more of an authoritarian, maybe even more so than Obama. But yeah, again, like I said, some of that's too early to be sure on at this point. But those are kind of my two concerns. Is he going to be for even bigger government? And if you just need to get the right people, then big government can work. And I personally don't think that it will. I think you need to make government smaller, more efficient, and really it needs to be focused on protecting people's rights. At the very beginning of this, I told you that we had I was kind of shocked by elected representatives that are having a sit-in to take away rights. So what would a Trump presidency look like? I'm not sure.
Okay, and Heath, the last question that I have for you is, what do you believe are the priorities for Wyoming's lone member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and how would you make sure that your voice is heard among the 435 voices?
Right. Well, one, as I stated previously, relationship building is going to be a key part. Finding not only Republican House members, but Democratic House members that you can engage on and bring up and address a lot of these serious issues that are facing Wyoming. So that's going to be one thing that I think is going to be probably one of the most important factors, and whether it's my success, whether if I'm chosen and elected, or whoever else that gets elected. Okay, because if we're here back again in 2 years and we're still talking about the same stuff, and there's been no change, no movement, we've gone another bust or another boom, and there's been no change with the education system, and ACA is still on the books, and some of this other legislation that goes back for 50, 60 years is still on the books, and we're talking about the same stuff, then I think that person, whoever it is that's elected, the voters need to hold accountable, whoever it is. And it's like I said, I know it's going to be a challenging role, but I felt very strongly that the way things are currently, that unless we really didn't break this hold that has entrenched itself, then this has got to happen all across the country, not just in Wyoming. And that the only way we're really going to have success is, again, to have those hard conversations. We're not always going to agree on everything. If we do agree on everything, if that does happen, then you're going to see this entrenchment continue. Nothing will change. And that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, Heath, that completes my questions. I wondered if there was anything else you'd like to share with listeners about your campaign or any other issues that we didn't touch on.
Well, again, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring up some of the challenges that we're facing, and there are many, and it's easy sometimes to kind of feel overwhelmed and disengaged, and just say, you know what, I'm not going to make a decision, I'm not going to vote. And I would encourage people not to do that, to get out there, be empowered, because you do have a voice, you do have the ability to choose a candidate that you feel like is going to truly represent you in Congress, and be, and like I said before, be a good advocate for the state of Wyoming, someone that's going to really try to start fighting against some of this culture and start trying to change it. Because, you know, in 2 years, you have to ask yourself as a voter, what kind of progress do we want to see in the next 2 years? And if we vote an establishment candidate and send them to D.C., it's realistic to expect anything will change. And should we be disappointed in them if they don't change anything?
All right. Well, Heath, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for visiting with me, and good luck with the rest of your campaign.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.